nascent form of linear programming. In fact, this was the fundamental building block for linear programming, or these concepts paid, great contribution to the discovery of linear programming. So that's basically in 1939 by then Nobel laureate Leonid Vitalyevich and Katarovich. So he's Russian. In that time, he was Soviet mathematician and economist who developed the fundamental building block of linear programming. But he didn't coin the name called linear programming. But he has developed some, mathematical foundation for linear programming, and he then used it for the World War II. And not only Russia, even the significance of linear programming has spread throughout the world. I mean, even in UK, in before World War II, they had developed this simultaneously, and they have incorporated in their war strategy as well, right? And as I repeat, linear programming, in short, it's called LP. It's a mathematical problem solving approach for efficient use or allocation of scarce or limited resources among the competing activities to the best advantage. So this is one of the good definitions of linear programming. Right. So if the resources are not scarce, then there's no need to optimize the resource. So again, if it is available in surplus, then we don't have to really look into some optimization. But we live in a probabilistic world, so we don't have anything as surplus as possible. So we need to look into the optimization. And sometimes it is not only efficient use, but also efficient allocation. So it's not about how we use the item, but how we efficiently allocate to two different sectors or different peoples or different elements or something like that. So that's also pretty much important. And more important concept in this particular thing is it's the competing activities. It's not irrelevant activities. We look into the associated activities, something like that, and make it a best advantage, which is the optimum value or something like that. So we'll be defining that in much detail in a couple of minutes later. But as of now, linear programming is this. And in fact, even post-war, after World War II in 1947, American mathematical scientist called George Bernard Danzig. In fact, he was considered to be the father of linear programming. During his college days, he has developed a concept called programming of interdependent activities in a linear structure. So this is what the research he carried out while he was as a student, as well as after he graduate, and he worked in US Department of Air Force. And this is what his research is all about. And later he has shortened down this to programming in linear structure. You remember this definition, in which we look into the allocations of limited resources and competing activities to a best advantage. And here also it is like, as I told you, it's competing activities. And here also it is interdependent activities. So which means that it's almost a kind of a, we look into a task of or a project which has a number of tasks which are interdependent, and we optimize them using linear structure or linear algebra or something like that. Then later in 1948, then Nobel laureate Charles Koopman, a Dutch mathematician and economist, he first coined the term called linear programming. So after that, after 1948, we have used the term called linear programming. And then Danzig developed a very novel algorithm called simplex algorithm. In fact, it's still being used. So in fact, Danzig got Nobel Prize because of developing this simplex algorithm. So it's a very powerful algorithm. So in a general linear programming, it finds solutions in different corner points. But simplex algorithm eliminates the corner points. It does not yield a maximum value, and the iteration follows, so that at the final iteration, it reaches the optimum solution. So we'll talk about that when we look into the simplex algorithm. and also the graphical method of solving linear programming. But as of now, simplex algorithm developed by Danton is more powerful, and he has derived this term from a geometrical concept called simplex, which is the representation of object in n-dimensional space with n plus 1 points or vertices, meaning that in a one-dimensional plane, the simplex is a single line because it has a 2 points. So geometry that connects 2 points is a line, whereas in a two-dimensional space, when n is equal to 2, it has n plus 1 point, so which means it's a triangle. In a three-dimensional space, it is 3 plus 1 is 4 vertices of 4 points. It is a tetrahedron. So that's as simple as that. As the dimension increases, the vertices and the simplex structure is varied with n plus 1 criteria. And that's the basic fundamental of the history, concise history of linear programming. But later in 1984, as I told you in the course introduction, an Indian mathematician called Narendra Krishna Karmarkar, and he has developed an algorithm called projective scaling algorithm using interior point method. So we'll talk about interior point method in integer programming. So as of now, it's a projective scale algorithm and very popularly known as Karmarkar's algorithm, which considered to be a very powerful algorithm than simplex algorithm. And in fact, people refer this as better than simplex algorithm, or it is having a computational capability of higher complexity than a simplex algorithm in polynomial time. So that's how it is then. But this algorithm is not part of your syllabus, but understand that Karmarkar algorithm is an Indian, developed by an Indian scientist, is kind of a pretty good or pretty much useful, and it's still used in linear programming. Right. So we have defined, linear programming, the history of linear programming. Now let's take a look at the characteristics of linear programming problem. So linear programming is a concept by itself, but linear programming problem is any problem, a real world problem, a complex problem, modeled or formulated so as to solve using linear programming is called linear programming problem. And these are some of the characteristics of linear programming. We'll be defining that in detail, but as of now, understand that there's an first thing is called objective function. Next is the constraint and non-negativity restriction and the solutions. In fact, solution, we generally look into the optimal solution. But then during the course of time, we will course of time in solving the problem, we'll encounter a lot of possible solutions, but that does not mean the optimal solution or the final solution. So those are called basic feasible solution. And things that does not contribute are called infeasible solution, and we don't worry about infeasible solutions. Right. So optimal solution sometimes will have a multiple optimal also, or alternate optima in other sense, and sometimes it's called a unique optimal. Mostly we'll encounter unique optimal solution, but special cases are alternate optima, which is the two optimal solutions. If there's a many optimal solution, then there will be a multiple optimal solution, something like that. So we'll define that in much detail maybe in the next class. But in this lecture, we'll be focusing on the basic overview or the characteristics of linear programming problem. In the slides, we talked about the linear programming problem, then we talked about different people, simplex algorithm, then we talked about Karmarkar's algorithm and something like that. Now it's all about a linear programming problem. It is a mathematical formulation to determine the best possible solutions to optimize. Here, optimization can be a maximization of the objective function or minimization of the objective function, or sometimes combination optimization. It's called trade-off. Sometimes we will maximize only benefit criterion, such as the profit. We'll enhance the profit, and we enhance the sales, and so many other things like sustainability. If you have a objective function of sustainability, we will enhance it, so we'll maximize it. We will minimize the losses. We'll minimize the loss. We'll minimize the the price or the cost. will minimize the the wastages or something like that. So all those things are considered to be a minimization objective function. Sometimes you have both profit as well as loss in an objective function. Then it is called combination of trade-off between both the things. And in that case, we'll call optimize or something like that. So this is what described here. Let's take a look at the characteristics of a linear programming problem. The first is a linear objective function. So the objective function should be a linear function. If it is a non-linear, we cannot solve using linear programming, but we can solve using non-linear programming. So that we will be discussing that a little later. But linear programming will be focusing on all the linear characteristics, only linear characteristics, be it objective function or in a constraint, whatever might be. Right. So this is an objective function. A simplified objective function is z equals to ax plus by, whereas a and b are technological coefficients, whereas x and y are decision variables, and z or z, whatever you call it. So that is the objective function, or it is also known as criterion of optimality, whereas x and y are decision variables. In fact, this one will decides the number of units, something like that. And it is subjected to two conditions. One is called linear structural constraints in the form of system of linear inequalities and non-negativity restriction. One of the important assumption or criteria or characteristics of a linear programming problem is that the decision variables can never take a negative value. So it will be greater than or equal to 0, but it is never less than 0. So that's basically the important criterion, and those restrictions are called non-negativity restriction. Whereas the other elements, which constrains the objective function are called structural linear constraints, and it is basically system of linear inequality. Remember, this is not linear equations; it's linear inequalities. So let's define what those are. So this is an objective function which is c1 x1, and it goes on till cn xn. So we have n variables, n number of variables, n number of decision variables, and the objective function is a function of that, and it is subjected to structural constraints. This is what I talked about, the constraints, which is the a11 x1. C1 is a technological coefficient, whereas a11 or the constraint coefficients, this decision variable coefficients. This is, remember, this is in it looks like in form of a matrix, right? So we have got what do you call n decision variables and m constraints. This is the right hand side coefficient b1 b2 till bm. You might wondering what this star represents, because this is not an equation when which we can put equal to, but instead these are inequalities. Inequalities can either be equal or less than equals to or greater than equals to inequality. So that only one would apply in this thing, and these are the structural constraints. And non-negativity restriction, all the decision variables, x1 is greater than equals to 0, x2 greater than equals to 0, and x1 greater than equals to 0. So these are the non-negativity restriction, right? So, and sometimes you can represent a linear programming problem in a shorter form called canonical form, when which it is the summation of I tends to 1 to n ci xi. So which means that c1 x1 plus c2 x2 plus c3 x3 plus c4 x4, and it goes on and on till cn xn. So remember, this scalar form gets concise to a canonical form. So this is how you represent this thing, right? And also the constraints a j I xi. I tends to 1 to n for all j is equals to 1 to m. So m constraints, n decision variable. We have got this kind of a thing, and this is the inequality proportion. And bj, j tends to 1 to m. So remember this entire matrix kind of format. We have concised it into a shorter form, which is called the canonical form. And here it is. And all the non-negativity conditions like x1, x2, x till xn greater than equals to 0, we can write it in a simpler term called xi, I tends to 1 to n, greater than equals to 0. So this is a canonical form. And in fact, there are some literatures, they have even considered to single level, sorry, which is the z equals to CIXI. This is vertical bar. This is called condition upon or subjected to this condition, this constraint, this canonical form stuff. And greater than, I mean, for all j is equals to 1 to m, and for all I is equal to 1 to n, and this non-negativity restriction. So this single line will replace all these three lines of, equations. Right. And this bar is very important. Otherwise, if we don't get this bar, then you have to put this summation equals to I is equal to n, because this is conditioned upon when which this is applicable. This equation is applicable here. I mean, this summation is applicable here also. So that's why we have not repeated that. And sometimes you can represent it by vector form also, in which the x is a decision variable or decision vector. If you read some pure mathematical programming books written by mathematicians, they only prefer, putting this in terms of vector form, which is C transpose, which is nothing but the coefficient, the technological coefficient. Then x is a decision vector. And in fact, this C transpose, you remember, C1 x1, C2 x2. So if you have a row, this is a column, this is a row vector, but if you transport it, it become a column vector. And this is a row vector. So column vector multiplied by row vector will give you the exact linear form. So C1 x1 plus C2 x2 and so on. So you cannot multiply a column vector by a column vector or a row vector by row vector, but instead you can have this transpose. Then that's why we have this particular entity, right? And same way, AJ transpose of X. This is the inequality symbol. In the replacing the X, star will put the any corresponding linear inequality symbol, and then BJ. In fact, all these things are vector. And finally, we'll have A vector. And remember, I told you the C vector here. So it's a column vector when you transpose it to this degree. And X vector, all these things are real numbers. So one of the important things should be noted down as a real numbers. And X vector should be greater than or equals to 0, because this is all positive. It should be positive integer. And AJ is a coefficient of the decision variables, and it can take any value from even negative value or so. And this is a B vector, and B vector is also greater than or equals to 0. So right hand side should always be greater than or equals to 0. It should not be negative. So that's one of the important conditions in the linear programming problem, right? So after this class, I'll upload this document so that you can take a look at it. If you spend a lot of time in this, then you'll really understand the significance of this particular problem. Then we talked about matrix form. It's also the same kind of a vector form. So it's also the same. So it goes on and on. And finally, you can put it everything in this short form, like the canonical form. This is a matrix form, concise matrix form, something like that. Right. So we talked about the objective function. We talked about the constraints, which is system of linear inequalities. Then we also talked about non-negativity restriction, and we talked about the solution, which is we didn't talk about solution. I beg your pardon, but we have defined what is basic feasible solution and optimal solution. So in the next lecture, we'll be focusing on the solutions or the methods of solutions in linear programming problem, right? So before we get into the actual core concepts of linear programming problem and its methodology for solving LPP, let's define some activities so that you really understand what are these characteristics, like objective function, constraints, and non-negativity restrictions, or something like that. So to do that, I have taken a recreational mathematical problem, which is called a magic square. Recreational mathematics is using mathematics for entertainment or something like that, but it is in a sense it is very useful for understanding the core concept. So if you really enjoy what you learn, then that will be more useful for you to understand or to grab the core concepts of the intended subject, right? So magic square. So many of you know what is a magic square, right? So magic square is an array of numbers consisting of distinct positive integers from 1 to n square. If you want to construct a 3 by 3 matrix, then it ranges to 1 2 till n square. N square is 3 square, which is 9. So you have numbers from 1 to 9 arranged in a 3 by 3 matrix. But if you want to construct 4 by 4 magic square, then number from 1 to 4 square is 16. So we'll have 1 to 16 arranged in a 4 by 4 matrix. And if it is 5 by 5 matrix, it is 1 to n square is 5 square is 25. So you have got 1 2 till 25 in a 5 by 5, and it goes on and on. So that's how basically a magic square. But more important implications of magic square is that if you sum any row in a magic square or any column in a magic square or the main diagonals, it is always the same number. Since magic square or a square matrix, main diagonals will be 2 in numbers irrespective of any order of magic square. And if you sum them all, sum them any magic square, any rows or any columns in a magic square or any main diagonal in a magic square, that will be a same sum. So that will be called magic constant. So that's what basically a magic square. And the magic constant can be calculated using a formula called n into n square plus 1 divided by 2. So that will become the basically a magic square, right? So this is all theoretically what is magic square. Let's take a look at the example of magic square. So this is a typical way of representing or symbolic form of magic square. So it has got this is a 4 by 4 magic square. It has got 4 columns and 4 rows, and A11, A12 or the individual cells, right? So if you sum A11, A12, A13 and A14, that will equals to B. And similarly, when you sum row 2, it becomes B. And when you sum row 3, it becomes B. And when you sum row 4, it becomes B. And also column wise, if you calculate it, it is B. And any columns, column number 2, column number 3 or column number 4, the sum will be equals to B. Another beauty of 4 by 4 magic square is that not only the entire rows, individual rows and columns, but also this particular sub matrix. Say for example, this is A11 plus A12 plus A21 plus A22 also gives B. And similarly, this square cell will give B, and this square cell will be. So totally there are 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, and the center is 9. So 9 sub 2 by 2 matrix are available for a 4 by 4. And if you take any sub matrix, that also yields the value to be, when you add and sum equals to be B. So this will be really difficult to grasp, but I'll just have an example. So this is a 4 by 4 magic square. The magic constant is 34. How do we get 34 is that? So n into n square plus 1 divided by 2. So which means that 4 into 4 square plus 1 divided by 2 is 34. So the magic constant is 34. So based on that, people have generated the magic square, the numbers, the arrangement of numbers from 1 to 16. So you can take a look at 1 to 16 because it's a 4 by 4 magic square in the order of 1 to and n square, which is 4 square, which is 16. Fine. And you remember, no number got repeated and no negative numbers and no zeros. So this is a typical magic square. And the magic sum is sum of all the numbers in the array. So that is what basically a magic sum, which is nothing but sum of n natural numbers. So in this case, it is 16, n is equal to 16. So it is 16 into 16 plus 1 divided by 2. This is a formula, is equal to 136. So when you sum all these things, it will have 136 or something like that. Right. Let's take a look at some, criterion so that we can understand much better. It is 7 plus 2 is 9. 9 plus 11 is 20. 20 plus 14 is 34. So this row gives you correctly. And then here it is 18 and 19. 19 plus 15, and that will become 20, 34. Correct. Right. So the diagonal also yields 34, and this diagonal also yields 34. Not only that, when you take this cell, as I told you, the submatrix, 9 submatrix, 9 plus 16 plus 7 plus 2 is also 34, and 2 plus 11 plus 13 plus 8 is also 34. So this is how the magic square got constructed, and this is a really good thing. Right. So why we are looking into the magic square is that uh, in the next example, I mean, this is, we have defined what's magic square. In the next case, we will construct a magic square, and we will study the characteristics of linear programming problem while constructing the magic square, right? Something like that. Right. So this is the activity. We'll learn eventually the linear programming while constructing a magic square. And this is basically called anniversary magic square or birthday magic square, or some examples like commemorative day or something like that. You can do a magic square out of it, something like that. And this was from the mind of a genius, an Indian mathematical genius called Srinivasa Ramanujan. He has developed this particular magic square, and he named it as date magic square. So which means that any date given, and he can construct a magic square, and that is the important thing, right? Something like that. So after this lecture, you can even try developing your own magic square based on your date of birth or any auspicious function day or something like that. So that's you really love the way you can create magic square or something like that. So this is an example of the Indian genius called the Edison of India, which is Mr. Gopalswamy Dorasamy Naidu, also known as GD Naidu. In fact, we have a blog in VIT Vellore on his name. So commemoration of GD Naidu, they have constructed a blog in VIT Vellore, and he was a pioneer engineer and inventor. He was credited to be the first who developed electric motors in India. So he was very famous guy, and you can even check this Wikipedia link to know about GD Naidu and his work, something like that. So his date of birth is 23 March 1893. So we'll look into magic square constructed based on his date of birth, something like that, right? So the first is the objective function is to create a magic square. So this is the 4 by 4. It is a 4 by 4 magic square, and the first row represents the date, the month, year. I mean the first 2 digit of the year and the next 2 digit of the year, or something like that. Right. That's why I've got YY and capital YY. Right. And I have created this thing. Improvising this concept called 23, 03, 18, and 93. So which means that I have got my first row filled. So which means that I know what is B, the value of B, which is the sum of all these things. So which is 23 plus 3 plus 18 plus 93, which sums up to 137. So I have to create a magic square which has all the rows. I mean, sum of individual rows is 137, and sum of individual columns is 137, and sum of diagonals are 137, and sum of sub matrix 2 by 2 matrix was also 137. So how do we go about and do this? Is this is the overall perspective. So first will be the objective function. So what we will do is we will maximize or optimize the value of A. A is the overall sum, magic sum. So we will optimize this, maybe maximization or minimization. At this point, we'll just stick on only with optimization. By optimize this n by n matrix. It's a square matrix, which is Aij, which is this values Aij. These values is the sum of all these values, and it's equals to A. So this particular A, I'm gonna optimize it, right? And I and J tends to 1 to 4 since it is a 4 by 4 matrix, right? Then total number of constraints. So this is very important. Kindly pay attention to this, because constraints are the fundamental building block for any optimization thing next to objective function. So constraints will actually yield the value that optimizes or maximizes or minimizes the objective function, something like that, right? So the number of constraints equals to number of rows. Say for example, how many rows here? 1, 2, 3, and 4 rows, plus number of columns. It is 1, 2, 3, 4 columns, and number of diagonals is always 2, irrespective of any size of the magic square. And then it's a main diagonal, and the number of sub matrix is what we call this 2 by 2 matrix. So number of 2 by 2 matrix in a 4 by 4 is 9. Say that's how it is. Actually, this is there's a formula for calculating this. It is n square plus n minus 1 square plus n minus 2 square and minus 2, and it goes on and on. So you don't have to really worry about what is this, but understand that these are the constraints, the row constraints. This is the row constraints. Number of rows is a11 plus a12 a13 equals to b, and a21 22 23 24 is equals to b, and we founded the square 137. You can incorporate here or leave it as it a11 a12. It's a row constraint, 4 rows and 4 columns and 2 diagonals and 2 by 2 squares. Number of 2 by 2 squares, this one, you can take a look at this. a11 plus a12, a21 plus a22. So that's what basically this thing, and equals to b. And similarly, we have got 9 of these, something like that, right? On solving this, we have the solution here. So this is the solution for 4 by 4 date magic square, provided by Srinivasa Ramanujam. So you don't have to really worry about the proof for these things, but this is an well-known thing. You can take it as a template, or something like that. So this is a solution. Remember, we talked about the objective function. We talked about the constraints, and one more thing we can do is non-negativity restriction, because this is all positive values. So you can have a negative value in a magic square or a 0 in a magic square. You can have 0, but sometimes negative numbers are not permitted. So that's how basically in a pure magic square we cannot permitted to have negative values and 0, and we cannot have repeated values also. So those are things that are not permitted or something like that. And when you solve this, you'll have this magic square, which row adds up to 137, columns adds up to 137, and diagonal adds up to 137, and this particular thing adds up to 137. So this is that. This is date, which is 23 and 03, and this is 18, it's 93. So in this case, 93 plus 1 is 94. This is 18 minus 1 is 17, and this is typically 0. For this magic square, we've got something called 0. But anyway, this is also considered to be a magic square, but it is called a semi-magic square. It is not a purely magic square, it's a semi-magic square, since we have got a 0. Sometimes we may encounter negative also. So if you try creating magic square for Thomas Alva Edison, then it comes under negative value also. So sometimes those also comes in the picture, because this is not like this, which has a definite number from 1 to 16, but this is where we have developed somewhere huge difference between numbers. We have 1, 2, but 3 and 4 is not there, 5 is not there, and so many numbers are not there. So that's how it is. The maximum number here, it is 95. So which means that we have incorporated numbers between 1 to 95 of 16 number, any 16 numbers. I mean 0 to 95, I beg your pardon. So any numbers between that gets populated. So this is typically a magic square, but it's recreational mathematics. But the concept I wanted to emphasize is the objective function. How do you make up your objective function, and how do you make up your constraints and non-negative restriction, by the way, and the solution. How do you get up the solution? And this is an optimal solution, and the sum of all the things entries is 548, which is A, which means we have optimized the objective function, which is capital A, and this is basically the semi magic, something like that. So this is the recreational mathematical concept. Maybe you can give it a try to your birthday. So make use of this as a template. So you can quickly try another 2 minutes. make your 4 by 4 matrix and put it in your data bed here, and you can start making the magic square. And if you sum up your first row, that will become your magic constant, capital B, a small b, and this will be the formula. So calculating the formula, something like that. Bye. So I think we have talked about linear programming, its history, and followed by the methodology or the characteristics. Then we'll talk about a recreational mathematical activity to understand the linear programming problem. In fact, this recreational mathematics is will not be for your exam. Do not worry. So it's only for your understanding of this problem. Maybe from next class onwards, we'll be focusing on the core concepts of linear programming.